kind as one species to other large groups of animals and living. So you see here that I've tried to describe what character the relationship to each of these major groups has: enemy, partner, food, medium. And here, of course, large carnivores are traditionally enemies, whereas livestock, such as the sheep, are social partners, for instance. But this kind of model could also be applied on specific species or specific populations or even individuals. In the work with the case study, I've traveled to the places you see plotted onto this map. I visited some zoos in Norway where I have briefly studied socialized wolves to familiarize myself with wolf behavior, and taken part in the Swedish Skandulv seminar, for instance, and presented there, which is the research seminar of the Scandinavian Wolf Research Project. Here's a few images from one of these zoos, Color Zoo, and I can also mention that a video among several that I uploaded to YouTube has now been seen 20,000 times and counting. So I'm trying to share the results and findings of my work through different channels. Here's some photos all taken by me by mounted wolves. And in the dissertation itself, you also see that I address topics such as the cultural semiotic of wolves and sheep, where I go into a number of examples in different genres and so on of cultural imagery of wolves and of sheep, which are very influential in well, probably also in politics and so on. And I describe the symbolic construction of the big bad wolf in contemporary Norway. So I call that a symbolical construction because it is built piece by piece on these different cultural images and whatever is associated with them. And in the Norwegian context, this has much to do with outdoor pastures where sheep are grazing at summertime. And there's a common perception in Norway that Norway is growing over. That could also be described as reforestation. And there's a common perception that there is reforestation, Norway is growing over because the predators are back, including the wolf, and they are clearly to blame because there are conflicts on outdoor pastures. And everybody knows that there are cases where, for instance, wolves prey on sheep on outdoor pastures. So the idea is it's not safe to make use of these areas, these resources anymore, because of the wolf and the other predators. So the wolf is to blame for the reforestation of Norway growing over. That makes sense in a way if you just look at these simple images, but it's not actually true. I mean, reforestation has other causes. I'm not going into that, but it's a construction that influences how people regard wolves in these areas where there's opposition to wolves. Here you see one of the most iconic Norwegian songs, which is something akin to a Norwegian anthem, and it's called the Norwegian. Now we'll read the two first verses, where you see how the idea of open landscapes, clearings, are associated with the idea of Norway. So people might feel that Norway, as they have thought about it, is under threat because of, for instance, the wolf. Between hills and mountains out by the sea, the Norwegian has been given his name, where he himself has dug the foundations and himself put their houses on top of them. He looked out at the rocky beaches. There was no one who there had built. Let us clear a place and build dwellings, and so we own the clearing safely. That's how that classical song begins. And in conclusion, I'd like to make use of another genre, and that's as a contrast and a complement to the apparently rigid categorization that I apply in much of the more theoretical and methodological part. because I've tried to develop some schemes, and I admit that they may appear as very rigid if you take them too seriously. And that's why I've also felt the need to make use of other genres, including more essayistic style in parts of some of these papers that are part of this dissertation. So one example is from the last paper, I, Wolf, and the title itself refers to this hypothetical use of kind of prose to describe something I could not describe in any other genre. And again, you must not take me too seriously. I do not mean that wolves have something akin to human language. They don't. But still, I think we can capture some of the wolf subjectivity by the form of prose. So here, meet Gaida, one of the wolves in Polar Zoo, which you saw some pictures from. I am Gaida, I, wolf. I lost my pups to Anonymous. He came, a zookeeper. It was bright day as he came, and then they were gone, the pups, and he had changed character, the zookeeper. I am Gaida. I too have changed character. This is partly based on an interview with some of these zookeepers, including discussions with this one zookeeper who removed the pretty newborn pups from their den and put them in another confinement so as to be socialized. Now, in describing this, I also paraphrase a famous section from Sartre's Being and Nothingness. It's the scene where Pierre is waiting for a friend in a cafe, and this friend's absence haunts the cafe. So that's a famous phenomenological description of the absence of something in the human life world. And what I try to describe now, by paraphrasing that, is that we can meaningfully talk about a similar kind of absence and perceived meaninglessness in an animal umwelt as well. So here again, the first person perspective belongs to this female wolf, Gaida, who lost her pups because they were not to be socialized. By the then now. Listen, that's an acronym for the names given to the four pups, are always there. Will they have waited for me? I look at the burrow, I look at the zookeepers, and I utter, they are not here. It is not that she discovers their absence in some precise spot, not even the empty den. Risen are absent from the whole enclosure home. Their absence fixes the enclosure home in its evanescence. The enclosure home remains ground, only it makes itself ground for a determined figure. It carries the figure everywhere in front of it, presents the figure everywhere to her. This figure, which slips constantly between her look and the solid, real objects of the enclosure home, is precisely a perpetual disappearance. It is, listen, racing themselves as nothingnesses on the ground of the annihilation of the enclosure home. Her expectation has caused the absence of listen to happen as a real event concerning the enclosure home. Listen absent of this enclosure home. And with that, I conclude.